The woman arrived every Saturday morning at 10:15 sharp, like clockwork. The bell above the restaurant door chimed softly as she walked in, holding the small hands of her two daughters, girls nearly the same height, both no older than 9, but strikingly different in appearance. One child, Lila, had a glow about her. Rosy-brown skin, warm eyes that danced when she laughed, thick curls tied with pink ribbons, and a step so lively it seemed like music followed wherever she went. The other girl, Mara, was quiet, frail, almost ghost-like. Her skin was pale and her limbs thin. She walked carefully, as if every movement required calculation. Her hair, though neatly brushed, lay limp on her shoulders. To outsiders, the contrast seemed harsh, even unsettling. Every weekend, their mother chose the same booth, the one near the window, where sunlight streamed warmly onto the table. And without fail, she ordered the same meal. A chicken sandwich and coconut ice cream for Lila. A bottle of water for Mara. In the beginning, the restaurant staff simply observed with mild curiosity. But over time, the scene repeated enough that whispers began to stir behind the counter. One particular Saturday, just after the family left, 3 waiters gathered near the espresso machine. Marco, the newest hire, was the first to break the tension. "I can't watch this anymore," he muttered, wiping the counter more aggressively than needed. "She doesn't even give the poor girl a piece of bread. A bottle of water. That's it." Sophie, quiet but attentive, glanced toward the empty booth. "The pale one never smiles," she noted sadly. "She always looks exhausted, like she's scared to eat." Jared, who had worked there the longest, leaned in with conspiratorial gravity. "I overheard one of the girls call her Mama, but only the pretty one. The other, she calls her by name. Maybe she's adopted." "That shouldn't matter," Sophie said firmly. "You don't mistreat a child just because they're adopted." Marco nodded vigorously. "It's abuse. Has to be." The discussion spiraled, feeding their conviction. Though none of them had ever spoken to the woman beyond taking orders, they felt sure of what they believed they were seeing. When the manager, Mr. Hargrove, came in the next morning, the waiters approached him together. "Sir, we need to talk," Sophie began. They explained everything: the meals, the contrast between the girls, the apparent favoritism, the pale child's frailty. Hargrove, a former Child Protective Services (CPS) worker, listened with a tightening jaw and folded arms. "Are you certain?" he asked when they finished. Jared spoke first. "As certain as anyone watching this for months would be." A troubled silence followed before Hargrove exhaled deeply. "All right," he said. "If there's even a chance this child is being mistreated, we have to act." He contacted the authorities that very morning. The police decided they would observe the situation discreetly the following weekend. If the woman's behavior aligned with the complaint, they would intervene. The next Saturday, the woman entered the restaurant at exactly 10:15, as expected. This time, however, an unusual stillness filled the air. Officers sat discreetly at different tables, uniforms partially concealed beneath jackets. The restaurant staff moved with a stiff, uncomfortable politeness, and the waiters exchanged uneasy glances. Lila skipped ahead to their usual booth. "Mom, can I get extra coconut flakes today?" she asked gleefully. Her mother smiled. "If they have them." Mara followed more slowly, unsteady on her feet. Her mother gently held out a hand, steadying her without drawing attention. But the officers were already watching. After taking the usual order, sandwich and ice cream for Lila, water for Mara, Marco slipped away to the back, his heart racing. This is it. This time someone will step in. The officers waited until the food was delivered. When they saw Mara sit quietly with her bottle of water, while her sister joyfully bit into her sandwich, they exchanged looks. One of them rose and approached the table. "Ma'am," he said sternly, "we need to speak with you. There have been reports of child neglect." The woman froze. "I beg your pardon." Her confusion seemed genuine, but to the officers, that meant little. "Please stand," the officer instructed. "We need to ask you some questions about your treatment of these children." Lila looked up, startled. "Mom, what's happening?" Mara's hands trembled around her bottle. I don't understand," the woman whispered, her voice cracking. "Neglect, Hargrove and the 3 waiters approached as the officers asked her to step aside. The woman drew in a slow, steadying breath. "Before anything else happens," she said with surprising calmness, "I want all the staff present. Everyone who reported me. If I'm going to explain, I need the room to hear it." The officers exchanged glances, but allowed it. The waiters gathered. Customers watched in uncomfortable silence. The woman's eyes rested on each of them in turn, hurt, bewildered, but not angry. Not yet. You think I starve one child and feed the other, she began quietly. You think I favor one daughter over another. You think I'm a monster. Her voice cracked. You have judged me without ever asking a single question. Sophie lowered her gaze. Marco shifted uncomfortably. The woman continued. Yes, I have an adopted daughter. But you have all assumed something else. Something untrue. You assumed you knew which child it was. A hush fell. She placed a gentle hand on Mara's back, the frail child who stood trembling beside her. This, she said softly, is my biological daughter. The waiters stared blankly, stunned. The woman exhaled shakily. When I was pregnant with her, doctors discovered she had congenital heart disease. They told me she might not survive childhood. From birth, she was in and out of hospitals. Tubes, surgeries, medications, countless sleepless nights. Her voice quivered, but she steadied it, continuing with raw openness usually reserved for private grief. 3 months ago, she had a heart transplant. A donor heart, from a little boy whose parents performed the greatest act of mercy I can imagine. Mara looked down, her eyes filling with tears not of pain, but of remembered fear. She is still healing, the mother said. Her body is still adapting. Her immune system is fragile. Even one bad meal, one food her new heart cannot tolerate, could make her terribly sick. Or worse. The restaurant workers looked horrified. I do not let her eat here, the woman said simply, because I love her. Because I would rather have her angry at me for saying no than lose her. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I cook every meal she eats. I measure every ingredient. I sanitize our kitchen daily. I have spent months watching her chest rise and fall at night, terrified it might stop. She then placed a hand on Lila's shoulder. And this child, my adopted daughter, has never once complained that her sister gets more of my attention. She understands. She is patient. She is kind beyond her years. Lila smiled gently at Mara, who attempted a small smile back. The mother looked around at the gathered staff, her expression both exhausted and wounded. You saw a pale little girl with a bottle of water. But you didn't see the hospital bracelets I cut off her wrist. You didn't see the nights she cried because her stitches hurt. You didn't see the months she couldn't even swallow solid food. Her voice grew firm. And you didn't see how much I love both my daughters. Silence filled the room, heavy, remorseful, humbling. The officers shifted awkwardly, clearly realizing they had acted on incomplete information. Finally, Hargrove spoke, guilt thick in his voice. Ma'am, I'm deeply sorry. We made assumptions, wrong ones. Marco stepped forward, his face flushed. We thought we were helping, he said quietly. We didn't think there could be another explanation. The woman nodded slowly. Concern for a child is never wrong, she said softly. But assumptions can be dangerous. If you had asked me, if you had simply asked, I would have told you everything. Mara tugged her mother's sleeve. Mom, can we go home? Yes, sweetheart, the woman whispered, wiping her eyes. As she guided her daughters toward the door, Sophie called out gently, Ma'am. If there's ever anything we can actually do to help, please tell us. The woman paused, managing a faint smile. Just treat my daughters kindly, she said. That's all I ask. And with that, she left, one glowing daughter skipping cheerfully at her side, and one delicate child holding her mother's hand with quiet strength. The bell chimed softly as the door closed behind them. Inside, the restaurant remained hushed. The waiters stood in a muted circle, processing their mistake. That mother, Jared murmured, shaking his head slowly. She's stronger than any of us realized. Sophie nodded, wiping her eye. And that little girl, she's a fighter. Mr. Hargrove sighed deeply. Let this be a reminder to all of us. Things aren't always what they appear from the outside. Marco bit his lip. We thought we were heroes. Sometimes, Hargrove said, the best way to help is to ask before acting. The staff returned to their duties, quieter, gentler, more thoughtful. And as sunlight filtered across the now empty booth near the window, it became a silent reminder that compassion requires understanding, judgment requires caution, and love doesn't always look the way we expect.